everyone, and welcome back to DSS Break. I'm Anna Annison, founder of the Data Science Salon, and I'm streaming live here from our headquarters located in the heart of Miami in the historic design district. And on today's DSS Break, I'm chatting with Jennetta George. She is the SVP of AI at AlixPartners and also the CEO of Artificially Intelligent. And she has a really impressive career applying AI in small healthcare startups to large technology companies. Jennetta is coding, and she's a coding and design expert using AI and data-driven applications to help businesses unlock hidden value and optimize their profits and impact. So she is now also an executive strategist guiding Fortune 500 execs and startup founders on leveraging AI for good, which is a really good purpose and mission. And she's also here in Miami, and she's a good friend too. So it's really nice to have you here. Thank you so much for joining DSS Break today, Jennetta.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for that great intro. Excited to be here.
So let me go ahead and dive right in. I know you've been, on such a remarkable journey working with AI across, a lot of different sectors. Can you share a little bit how you got into the space and kind of like where you are today? Because I'm sure there's a lot of, people that are maybe thinking about getting in, especially women. We could share your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started really when it wasn't even called AI or data science, probably about 15 years ago. I just really loved mathematics. I got all of my degrees in theoretical mathematics, and I really thought I was going to be a math professor because when you're in academia, what else do you do but be a professor? But I was really lucky that I actually had a mom who worked in tech and still works in tech. And so she was always really pushing me to learn a programming language and to take a job in tech. And that's what I did. And so I started off in the data science space and loved coding, and I still do love coding, but I realized that my true passions really lied in more of the business development and the strategy side, really figuring out how do we apply AI in ethical ways, how do we apply it that will bring the most value. So I spend a lot of my time now really straddling making sure I stay sharp with the technical, and as a technical leader, being able to be hands-on, but also really enjoy my work with executives at companies, helping them make a big impact with AI.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're like a unicorn.
Thanks. I appreciate that title.
Yeah, so when it comes to implementing Gen AI in the enterprise and like the bigger companies, what challenges, first let's start with challenges. What challenges have you encountered? And how can businesses navigate them effectively and without like actually breaking everything, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the question I know is around generative AI, but it's a problem for all types of AI because as we know, generative AI it's a really new type of AI, but we've been doing AI, machine learning, data science for decades, and a lot of the problems persist specifically to generative AI. And not in order of importance, but I think some big issues are around data privacy, around compliance, legal, explainability, and bias. Those are some of the biggest things I see. So jumping into ways that we can combat that. And first, I think it's just important to understand how we're using generative AI and then how those issues come into play. So when I think about generative AI, the main thing I think of is ChatGPT, but obviously there are lots of other small startups and spin-offs of these pre-built solutions. So what I mean by that is it's not me as a data scientist building a model that is generating things through AI, but rather it's me going to someone's company like OpenAI and using their model. So when it comes to that, data privacy is obviously a really big issue because I'm giving them my data and it now no longer belongs to me. It's now in their servers. So we have to worry about, how much of my company's information, if I'm an executive, how much of my company's information do I want to feed through those systems for them to now have?
Right.
So and also with that, comes explainability and bias, where again, it's their system, so I don't know how they're coming up with the answers that they're coming up with. So obviously there's not too much that we can do to address that when it's someone else's system, but we can start looking about how do we start building things internally to make sure that we are, one, staying compliant with our data, not giving out our clients or customers data, but also start building in explainability factors into the LLMs, the large language models, or even the decision trees, the convolutional neural networks that we're building in-house to make sure that we're staying compliant.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's really interesting that you talk about compliance. I just was giving a webinar, and one of the questions was about like compliance and if investors are like interested in the compliance when they're like looking at pitches. And I have not had any questions about that when we've been pitching. Like, so they so that is very, but it sounds like that is a very, like, that's a huge thing, right? Like,
Yeah, it is. And it's
because,
something
yeah, what
that
if you build it and then once you build it, what if it's like, oh, like you can't really use it because of like privacy or something, right? Like,
yeah, well, I mean,
you
just to
waste
give
all
you an
this money and then
example,
you're like, oh my God, like you can't really.
just to give you an example, I really love web scraping personally, and I'll just say,
Mhm.
not for any company that I'm attached with. I have not scraped for these companies, but for me personally, I do, and I think it's really fun to see what kind of data I can get from scraping the web. And I offered to one of the companies that I work for, like, hey, I have this scraping tool. We can use it, and we can take this publicly accessible data and feed it into GPT and get some insights. And the first thing they said to me was, no, wait, we have to talk to legal first, because there are so many different compliance issues with Instagram, with LinkedIn. They don't like it when you scrape. So you got to make sure that you're staying compliant with the companies that you're working for. And it's a really
Especially
good
the
point.
larger like enterprise
Yep,
grade
exactly.
companies. Yeah, that makes sense. And what about some opportunities then? Because I mean, I'm sure there's so many, like maybe you could go through like maybe like the top three that you see.
Opportunities in solving the problems, or
Like
just in itself?
opportunities in like implementing Gen AI in the enterprise, like the kind of use cases that can be like the new use cases, like that could be
Yep.
created. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, specifically with generative AI, where I've been applying it most right now is in marketing. So, and Anna, you know this personally, right? There's so much work right now that's being done by content creators, by really anyone in the marketing space, and it's not that we want to get rid of those people, because the main thing about AI is that we always want to keep human in the loop, and that's never
Yeah,
something that we're trying to get rid of. So we still need the subject matter experts to be the part of the input and part of the output, but that middle part, that bulk of just the tedious constantly creating content, that's something that can really easily be taken over by generative AI. And really a big part of the monitoring comes though in making sure that these models are not biased, because again, if we don't know the data that they're being trained on, then there's always a huge amount of room for being trained on biased data. Maybe it's racist data that is somehow getting fed in. Maybe it's
yeah,
incorrect data that's somehow getting fed in. So we really need to make sure that we're monitoring that. But any of these very like tedious just content creation tasks is a really great use case for Gen AI.
for sure. Yeah, no, I think that's one of the top ones. And if anybody could create something like better than, Chat GPT, I think, that it's going to be something big. So we'll see what
Better,
happens.
and that maybe costs less money to run, to the processing power. I was reading the other day on one of the blogs that I follow that there's a chance that if GPT does not get an injection of funds soon, they might become bankrupt by the end of the year, because they're spending something like $700,000, I want to say, per month on
Yeah, that
processing
sounds
costs.
like even low, to be
Yeah,
honest. You know
and
what I
it
mean?
might be,
Because yeah,
maybe
like
it's a week. Maybe I'm
yeah,
getting that number
it
wrong,
probably
but
is more like a week because
yeah,
but I mean, hey, Microsoft makes that in a minute, so they could just
there you
feed.
go. Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so again, but we need others, right? Like again, we have, we need other, like we need, like, there's Uber and Lyft and We need other things. We
Yeah.
can't just have one tool out there, right? I think we need to diversify it a little bit.
Yep.
And maybe we could talk a little bit about kind of your vision of where you see this all going in the next 5 years, and kind, like more, both from like the consumer perspective and also from like the practitioner perspective of where like you are as a practitioner. How would you as a practitioner, I'm sure you're already, even before this craziness about ChatGPT, before you're already using AI like that to
Yep.
like simplify your life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think I can answer that two ways. One is still following down that compliance conversation of we're in this really exponentially growing field where we're kind of snowballing ourselves with where we are developing and producing products at such a fast rate that we need to be able to catch up in how we are governing and making sure that we're following all of the rules and not building things in ways that are just going to implode on ourselves in a few years. I think that everyone in the technical and in the investor space are really worried about that. So one, making sure that we are hiring the right people to address those concerns on the building front, and then on both the building, but also on, like you're saying, the consumer front. It's not just Gen AI. And I think that we really need to make sure that we're expanding between generative AI, but also the more traditional analytical and just like machine learning component
Yeah,
of
exactly.
AI, because that unlocks so much value. And when you combine them together and when you're using automation along with generative AI and just product and cost and P&L optimization, like all of these things, when you think of like business KPIs, how does that mix with generative AI? That's where a lot of value is going to also be coming from. But we need to be educating our founders and just everyone in the space on like what there is outside of just generative AI so that they can be informed and they can start building.
Yeah, because again, it's true that you can't just start building. You need to know other things aside from just like, you need to know deep learning, like you need to know NLP, machine
Right.
learning operations, like the infrastructures, like cloud, clusters, and all of that's, it's not, yeah,
All
it's
of
not,
that stuff.
it's a lot of different things, and like a lot, yeah, it's very hard, I think for somebody that just coming in, it's hard to understand. So I think it's good to find experts that can help you
Yeah.
like navigate the field, right? So I think that's very important, especially people like you, Jennetta. Uh, so maybe I know that we're going to be on the panel in Miami.
Yes.
Maybe you could tell me just one thing that you're excited to dive more into during that day.
Yeah, I'm so excited for the Data Science Salon event in Miami. It's always my favorite week in general because there's so much fun stuff
Yay.
going on. And I come at it from a consulting perspective. So, I'm working with a lot of the companies that will be there and be represented. And I'm always looking forward to learning more companies and what they're doing. Because sometimes you'll see a company and you won't necessarily think, oh, they're doing amazing things with AI, but then you go to an event and a panel that they're speaking on or a talk that they're giving and really realize all of the innovation that's happening where you don't even think it's happening. So I'm really excited to find out what's happening, especially in the Miami ecosystem. And I'm
Yeah,
so grateful for
yeah.
you and your company for bringing that to Miami.
Well, thank you so much for always supporting us and being an ambassador. And yeah, I'm excited about the panel and everything. And just one last thing before we'll wrap this up. What are kind of the trends aside from like the Gen AI things that you're excited about? Because I know, like,
Yeah,
yeah, like
there's
what
a
else is
lot.
really happening there on your side of the, that people are excited about on the, practitioner side?
Yeah, two big things that I've been focused on for not even just right now, but really for the past 5 or 6 years. One being graph technology, and it can sound maybe dull and boring at face value, but if you really think about what graph and data science graph technology is doing, is it's harnessing the power of relationships and connections. And as we are social creatures, so as we really think about how do we unlock some optimization in how we socialize. Graph is a really big way of doing that, and just uncovering patterns in human behavior, even to solve things like anomalies and fraud detection and things of that nature. Graph can do a lot there. And then the other thing that we talked about earlier really is just around explainability and responsible uses of AI. And that transcends just generative AI. Like I mentioned at the top of this session, right? We always need to be able to explain what our models are doing and make sure that we are applying them ethically. And there's just so many advancements being made in that field across AI. So I'm always trying to stay on top of that.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Jennetta, for taking the time to chat and sharing your expertise. And I'm excited to see you around the community. And yeah, come by DSS on September 19th. And if you can't join us in person, we're going to be live streaming everything. So you can tune in virtually, actually. And we're going to share a link to apply to attend. So we're going to throw that in there, and you guys can apply, and maybe you'll get selected to get a ticket. And yeah, we'll see you here next week. And thanks so much, Jennetta, and have a wonderful week, everybody.
Thanks, Anna.
Bye.